You guys have been beating us up for this story, the Coyote versus LS3 shootout. We've actually had more reader submissions asking about this story than any other story we've ever produced, and we kind of got a little bit ahead of ourselves by teasing it a little too early. I've actually grown a beard and turned a year older since we started this project, so without further ado, here's part one, the LS3 versus Coyote build. Today we're L&R engines for a very different type of build. It's a battle of the brands. First, we're going to get into the build, then we're going to take it over to Westech to see which engines make the best peak power, average power, power per cubic inch, and best usable power curve. From there, you can judge to see which one is best. But first, let's get into the build. All right, let's first start with the LS3. Now the LS3, all the parts that we got for this build from Pace Performance, standard LS3 6.2 aluminum block. For the crank, we actually went with an LSA crank versus the LS3 crank because it's a factory forged crank and it costs about the same amount as a cast crank. For pistons and rods, we went with Molly's new 1mm ring pack pistons. And also for the rods, we went with the Lunati Voodoo Series rods, which is a really nice budget H-beam rod. Now over here we have our Coyote. The LS3 was a completely 100% brand new build. The Coyote is very expensive to build brand new, so we actually got an F-150 takeout motor for $3,000. So we're going to be using the stock block here and the stock crank. But for the pistons and rods, we're using a Manley piston and rod combination. It's actually a 3640 piston, so it's a very, very slight overbore from the factory. Allows you to kind of clean up the bores and then put this new piston in there, so you're probably like 1 or 2 more cubic inches over factory. For the crank here, we're using the factory crank. We had to add a little bit of weight because the rotating assembly is a little bit lighter from the factory. And then again on the block over here, we've already got this prepped with the Cleveite bearings and the ARP main studs, but just a factory cleaned up block by L&R. They just honed it, cleaned it up, did the mains, and everything turned out perfect. Building both engines for under $10,000, and both engines will be in the low 11:1 compression ratio, and we picked the parts between the two engines which we think will do the best.
On this LS3 build with this LSA crank, makes good power for what it is. Coyote, another great motor, a little more complicated in the build. The LS3 is a small package, big power. The Coyote is larger in stature than the LS3.
If you were going to put one of these two in one of your project cars, which one would you pick and why?
I would probably pick the LS3 just because of the fact it's a little more compact, you know. And if I was putting something together, I wanted all the horsepower, I'd go with the Coyote, you know. I think Coyote's going to make more power than the LS3.
All right, folks, there you have it. Part one is complete. Now we're going to roll into taking both these motors over at Westech and dynoing them. We're going to start with our LS3 and then move along to our Coyote. But meanwhile, comment below. Let us know what you think about the parts we put into this motor and who's going to win.